lightning. He said that's kind of it. So he frames everything that you can't see into kind of that realm, including where memories are stored. And so it became this very interesting thing that was still probably like 60% woo, where he went with everything.
But that's a little bit my problem, is when you start to go into the woo, you discredit the whole thing. Whereas they measured people in a content phase versus angry phase, and saw that the electromagnetic field deployed was different. So there was communication of information, right? That was being done through the field generated by the heart. That's
some form of communication
through electromagnetism, which means, and they were showing, like, once people got close enough, there was interaction between the two. So no matter what, you can communicate your mood through the electromagnetic field stemming from your heart. That has been measured and proven. But the problem is, the second you go past that,
you can make a lot of conclusions.
No, but that's not even, actually, I don't mind that part. The problem is when you start to talk about that, is that means that now no one can say the electromagnetic field emitted by your heart communicates information, even though that is completely true and measurable. But I can't say it because people from there go into the woo stuff. The woo stuff should be yours to say. But we need to have the electromagnetic field of the heart as a base, as a scientific base. To say that, therefore, there is an aura.
You need to measure what you can measure.
And that was measured, and it is proven that the information transcribed through the electromagnetic field from your heart display your emotion. So that's your aura. So this is scientifically proven. Can we stop there and establish as a base? And from there, each individual takes it wherever he wants. But the problem when they go base into it is that they're going to use the craziest shit to
basically discredit the whole.
And this is what happened to Reich.
Listen, I'm going to call it the most American version.
Yeah, exactly, right. Right, that's what happened to him, because he went into the orgone energy, which was fucking nuts. He tried to explain quantum mechanics with orgone energy, and he was wrong, because he's not a physicist. But his psychotherapy works through the overwhelming signals from the body, which is everything I read about, right, was dead on. Was spot on. He did help with schizophrenia. If you look at all the stuff that he said, all the way up to orgone energy, and you look at cognitive neuroscience, you'll find the lines. They all meet. Right. So he said it with different words, and he was wrong because he didn't have neural imagery by then. He didn't have all the shit they have now.
We are getting too far away from this. We
just
started.
Whatever. No, but let's go there for a second, because but my point is, this was 100 years ago. Right? And the dude, yes, was he completely fucking nuts on orgone energy? Yes, but again, his psychotherapy work on schizophrenic people, character analysis, the book, that woman fucking wanted to stab people. Might have, actually. And he got her to functioning. Didn't cure, but got her to functioning and everything. And did it through his shaking mechanism and all that stuff, right? So, but if you look at what he's talking about in character analysis, where he's not going into orgone energy, and you go with today's cognitive neuroscience, you will find that they meet. For example, that whole body hyperthermia, right? What is that? Overwhelming signals from the body in order to diminish somatic errors. If you were to translate character analysis in those terms, you would find that it's exactly what he's talking about. The body reconnecting with the mind. And so there's a way to see what he did as completely correct in that sense. You know what I mean?
Plus, I think can't you come to the same conclusion from completely the wrong context? Still kind of be at the same place.
But in this place, he was in the right context, because he was attacking schizophrenia. And he was going from the mind, and basically what he's talking about is what the frontier, whatever they call it, of cognitive neuroscience is at right now. My point is, he did it 100 years ago. Imagine if we had been able to take that stuff 100 years ago and keep playing with it. Right? And we didn't, because he went into orgone energy. So people use the spiritual, the woo stuff, in order to discredit an entire thing. And that's a shame. So that's why I would like for those people to stop going into the crazy shit and try to establish the electromagnetic field of the heart, because that alone shows the aura is a real thing.
Well, and if you've been in here for a few minutes now, what you're catching is the shit we just talk about as we're getting set up here. But I do think it's a good point to get into because we talk about the woo thing, like people start peddling woo with their stuff, it discredits. But there's going to be a fair amount of questions or dilemmas raised in these next few subjects that are about who are you? What makes you, your decisions, all of those things. And I think it's important to separate what you know versus what you speculate, and then still be able to have fucking ideas without being afraid of getting
But what kills me also is like, you know, like sometimes I'll offer a lot of very complex idea to think about, and then people right away come and add a question past what I already told about, and I'm like, is that not enough? Like, you master already. Just because I explain it in 5 words means you mastered already that you have to add a questions I have no answer to.
Often I think
I get that one all the time.
But I think what that is, I think, because I feel that mechanism too, is I'll get something from you that is lengthy, comprehensive, and also in a very specific subject.
Right.
And so I see it, and the only thing I can do is maybe make one adjacent connection to my world that makes sense right away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I figured that out. I think it means this, but it's incomplete. So the only thing I can do is be like, is it this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, it's like, but what about the connection between the chakras? And I'm like, but we need to go there? Like, why do you have to put it into a place where I can't answer you because who the fuck knows? Yeah. And I mean, like, we get from a place where there's something we can analyze and talk about because, like, we have the, you know, like the neural imagery, for example, like all this, we have the testing. How about we figure that one out? Because it's not done.
Yeah.
By the way, that is also a podcast we're gonna have to do about the fact that no, we don't know. Can we list the thing that we don't know? Because even in nutrition, there's a shit ton of stuff. Training with, but the idea is you come up with an idea that is already like so much to discuss and go into and everything. People are like, yeah. Let's go into the voodoo stuff. And how come that person came back from the dead 40 days after? Yeah. I'm like, I don't know that he did. But are we going there? Can we go back to the fucking electromagnetic field from the heart that allows us to communicate information? Yeah. Is that not mind-blowing enough, by the way? That's the part also where I don't get. It's like I talk about stuff that I think are completely mind-blowing. Yeah. Like, okay, the electromagnetic field. So the heart has its own brain, right? So it has its own neurons, set of neurons that is a pacemaker for the brain because he has an electrical wave that keeps pumping. It's his own nervous system, the intrinsic cardiac nervous system, right? And has an electromagnetic field that is 60 times stronger than the brain. Through that electromagnetic field in a horizontal plane, can transmit information about one's feelings. Like, so we measured content versus angry, and we saw that it was not the same information being transmitted. So that literally you can communicate your state with someone close enough, like in the test, it was 6 inches. So, for example, couples, like, for example, making love or shit like that, right? They can communicate information through an electromagnetic field. That goes back to quantum mechanics and everything. That's not enough mind-blowing for you, that we have to take it to chakras and all that shit. But that means there's an aura. Like, we measured the shit the Chinese have been talking about for fucking 5,000 years. Can we go into that one? I find that extreme. I find that mind-blowing myself. Yeah. Sometimes I just want to, like, can we finish with this before we have dessert?
But that's like, interesting.
Can you finish your plate, please?
That's interesting from you because often, I mean, I even remember that you had drawn just at one moment. I remember a couple years ago, even further than that, 2-3 years ago, we were going through some of the torque chain stuff in the mentoring program. You made a simple observation. Simple observation is about where the internal torque line, generally speaking, is going to meet with the external torque line, generally, is that's going to align with about where the chakra points were. And all you said was, it's interesting. They probably had something interesting in how how the body's movement design. That was kind of the end of your conclusion. And then I think I remember just this like bunches of questions. By the end, I was like, guys, what are you fucking doing here?
Yes, exactly. Like, why are we going into suddenly like Buddhism? And I'm like, but I just said internal torque, external torque. Yeah. So that there was a physical representation of the chakra points, so that maybe chakra points were not as voodoo stuff as some people make it out to be. And that was a little bit my point too, is can we go back to internal torque, external torque, make that work so that we can show there's a physiological proof to the chakras.
And I think it's more about overlaying recognizable patterns over that.
Exactly.
Truthfully, if you start looking, if you want to confirm something like this, great. What you have is one pattern that overlays those specific regions.
And then we can go from there.
And then we find another.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And you let's do that.
So what I'm trying to do is, so for example, that's something actually Dr. Peterson was talking about a lot, which means like we cannot dismiss cultures as a source of wisdom.
No.
To me, when I look at cultures, I look at the greatest empirical evidence study ever done. 5,000 years, millions of people, and you end up with specific patterns. Obviously extremely complex because there's so many people. But if you start to see a specific pattern emerging from different cultures that are close enough the same, like warrior culture, like for example, we're going to talk about that today, left side versus right side of the body.
Okay.
All cultures say that the left side of the body is the woman's side, the right side of the body is the male side. From not a gender obviously, but from an energy perspective. The Maori say the right side is a warrior side. Japanese, you are not allowed, even being a lefty, to swing a sword with a left, right? Because warrior side and it goes on and on and on and on like that. All right, so is that not an empirical evidence study?
Yeah.
So it would be more like a qualitative study because you don't have the neural imaging or all that stuff. But is there something to be gained out of looking at those things? I believe so.
Yeah.
And so when I saw the chakras, I was like, well, they've been talking about it for 5,000 years and they established a number of lists. So some stuff might be wrong in that, but there's probably some very useful information we can get out of that. And if we overlay the patterns from Western culture with the Eastern culture in that sense, maybe we can get something better. Not perfect, but better.
Plus a lot of the measurable hardware stuff starts to align with this, right?
Exactly.
So that's kind of what we're going to get into today, some of these mental networks, if you will. Because we're going to start to break down the process of like, I don't even know what to call this. Like the lens with which you view fucking existence or you experience existence.
Cognition. So and that's consciousness.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to get into kind of in the next
few episodes. Right.
So we got to lay the groundwork for this, so you understand what the parts of you and your consciousness.
Can I start with vocabulary?
Yes.
So that's important.
Yep.
There's something called interoception, which is cognition of the inside of your body, of the signals coming from the inside of the body. Then there's exteroception, which is cognition of the outside world, through the skin or, the wind, vision, stuff like that, right? And so most of science has been focusing on exteroception. That comes from René Descartes, I think therefore I am, was the idea that there was a gap between your conscious thoughts, your soul, all that stuff, and your body. I will blame Christian culture on that, where the body is that dirty thing that is not to be trusted, that have sex and have food and shit, whereas the mind is that pure thing that lives almost in a different realm as the body, right? And where neuroscience is taking us is that actually a lot of your sense of self, so you as a person, right, is actually connected directly to all your body. So most people will be, oh, well, that's obvious, but it goes further than that. It's the monitoring of those signals that create a sense of self. So that your sense of self is based on how you feel your inside world.
Yeah. And when you mention that, though, like the monitoring of your internal signals, what exactly kind of are those internal signals of the body?
Right. Okay, so are we doing interoception then? Are we doing this?
No.
Let me explaining it fast, and then we can go deeper into.
Let's play that, and then we'll go on to the networks. Yeah.
Well, let's see how long that takes, and then we can kind of play it by.
We've got essentially like 6 hours of things to do between these subjects.
So we'll see where we. Okay, so let me start with this because it's very important. First of all, we think so. Again, that the problematic issue is that we see the brain as the center of conscious thoughts, the center of the soul, and then it lives almost in another universe, and then there's a body that is that thing that lives in this world and that you kind of have to deal with. Yeah. And actually, it doesn't work like that at all.
It's just this big sack of meat and bones and
exactly.
goo.
That doesn't do anything but reacts to...
If all the goo leaks out.
Exactly, right. Yeah, well, right? And even if you go through psychotherapy, there's a very good reason for us to think about it like that. But that's basically that, right? And it's actually completely wrong. So let's start with the brain. So first of all, we don't have one brain, we have three. Like people, that's the main thing to understand, is that we have three brains, not one. So brain obviously is that one. But we have what is called the enteric nervous system. So your gut is actually his own brain. So what does that mean? He has his own set of neurons. Right? Yeah. He has his own set of neurons, and it's his own nervous system in the sense that he creates his own signal. So on a number of things, which means he communicates. So this on your gut there, and I'm not even talking about the gut flora. I'm just saying the enteric nervous system, the gut itself, right, has neurons that is used to make decisions and communicate with your top brain about it. It creates, so let's give the list. It creates 50% of the dopamine in the body is actually created in the gut. It creates 95% of the serotonin in the body is created in the gut. There's something called the gastric basal rhythm, which is a low electrical wave, about 0.05 hertz, I think, that get pumped on a regular basis. So an electrical wave that gets pumped through the body like that acts as a pacemaker for the rest of the body. That will come extreme. It's very, very important because, for example, people talk about oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin all the time like they actually know what it is. Mm-hmm. No, you don't. It's so far more, no one does. It's so far more complex. Do you know that oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin are units of time? Are linked to units of time. Isn't that the crazy thing? So you have different units of times in the body. Like this, for example, a few milliseconds. But this under 2 seconds and over 2 seconds is not the same processes at all. And so oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin correspond to units of time. One is 3 seconds and below. The other one is 2 seconds. The other one is 1 second and below. And so serotonin won't do the milliseconds. He'll do his own chunk of times. So isn't that the most fascinating stuff ever, right? So you have neurotransmitters that are in charge of units of time. So it seems that even your sense of self is related to your conception of time. So when you can hear your heartbeat, if you can focus on hearing your own heartbeat, you will see that time dilates. Suddenly, you are more in the present, right? Because you are associating yourself with a pacemaker, and that dilates time.
You don't have all these external factors dictating the pace of
right. And so,
experience.
But as time dilates, your sense of self is different because now you're listening to inside. So there's a lot of stuff based on that, and that's linked to neurotransmitters that have their own chunk of time they're responsible for. Yeah. The whole thing is so much more complex than we understand. So that's only the enteric nervous system, by the way, right? Yeah. So, and again, it keeps on going, but I don't have time to go into all the enteric nervous system does. And that's not even the gut flora, by the way, that has all those fucking aliens inside your body dictating what you do on a whole other level based on, And so, it gets very complex.
So when but you mentioned this when you were talking about the enteric nervous system, about how your experience and your sense of self is then based on, you're focusing on inside versus outside, correct?
Which is called interoception.
And that is interoception, and that's the thing that we're going to get into at length in the future. But what's interesting, though, when you mention that, that your attention is being put on this, or at least that's what you're monitoring more so than what's outside. And that's the kind of where we want to get to with this, is how do we dictate where we place attention?
Right,
and what
exactly.
are those networks,
Right.
and what does
so
that mean?
Let's go at that one. So before we go into that one, I need to go to the heart because that's also another brain. So the brain is a heart. So the heart is a brain, sorry. What do I mean by that? The heart has its own set of neurons. It has ganglia with neurons in it. Again, it has a short and long-term memory of its own. It does a number of things. So the heart has neurons. Okay, so how many people know that, right? It's his own brain and it's his own nervous system. It's another pacemaker that pumps a low electrical wave acting as a pacemaker. He has the electromagnetic field 60 times stronger than the top brain, magnetic field 100 times stronger than the brain. And so on nervous system and everything. And the heart connects. So we're going to go into, I'll explain fast on that one because that's another podcast we have to do. But the heart connects to part of the brain that are exactly the part of the brain responsible for the sense of self. Okay. So, by the way, we don't have a brain that is in a bubble, and it doesn't work like that. It's that certain part of the brain are linked directly to the body, And when they work together, they create something else. So that's what we're going to explain today. Because again, we don't understand how the brain works. So we need to explain that first. So there's those two, right? And the monitoring of those signaling is done by a part of the brain that is in charge of the sense of self. What the sense of self means, it means I and me. I and me are not the same. I go to the market, that is I. I feel sad, that is I and me. He makes me feel sad, that's all me. Okay. Right? Me is, how do I feel? I is me as a subject of the action. Okay. Right? So he goes to the market, has nothing to do with me or I. Right? And so now we go to the top brain. And so there's certain specific part of the brain that are in charge of the I and the me of you as a person with everything that it entails. Right. So we're still stuck on that idea that there's certain parts of the brain that do certain things. Doesn't work like that. Yeah. Certain part of the brain are usually part of something else. So how does the brain work? It's a game of networks, right? Certain part of the brain link together, and that is what allows you to do specific things. So imagine a chessboard, like when we play chess, it's on a 2D chess, right? Yep. So imagine a 3D chess, right? Which means you have that, but then in spatial stuff. So now imagine a game that is a 3D chess played over, who else knows, 20, 30 3D boards, right? And imagine that within a flow of time. And then you got how complex the brain is, which means we don't know. We don't know that much. We really, really don't know that much. We're barely starting to understand the complexity of it. But so that idea that the brain sends the signals to the body does it. Oh my God. Yeah. It's so, but that's the world Isaac Newton in a way created, where everything is deterministic, where everything is a stimulus that gets to your brain, and then your brain tells the body, react to it. Well, there is
a very interesting, I was just watching that, I was talking about yesterday. It did mention that there was over the course of scientific history, there was a moment where there was a very much a push to the forefront of what you would just call just materialistic science. Yeah. And Isaac Newton fell underneath that. It was just very much so materialistic science. Brilliant people, all those things. But based on this, and then that all goes to the forefront, and a lot of those other things all of a sudden can start to get left by the wayside. Yeah. So,
hey,
what's up?
But more, I believe also, like, welcome to human stuff. I believe that it happened because, again, like, science was fighting religion. Yeah. And for the longest time lost, right? And so there was a fight there of really, like, it became almost like a binary thing where religion had the whole, like, consciousness and all that stuff, and we're going into the woohoo, completely crazy stuff. And science took upon itself to be the mental of everything is simple. Everything can be narrowed down to something smaller that can explain everything. There was a war going on, right? And the war meant that the church went further into you can't explain it, and science went further into we can explain everything, which wasn't true either. And so they ended up being as dogmatic in a weird way as the church. And so we came from everything is simple to everything is simplistic. And that's the problem that we faced. So everything can be explained. That's true, but that doesn't mean that you know. Yeah. We don't know yet. Yes, I'm sure it will be explained eventually. Just right now, it isn't. There's a number of things we don't know how to do. And until we have quantum computers, chances are we won't be able to get to.
Now, some of these things are coming to light, though, now, over the last few years, right?
So the networks, right? So that means that the brain is really a game of 3D chess over multiple boards. So because of the prediction versus, right, so do I cover that real fast?
No.
Right, so everything works. Let me cover that real fast.
So cover Carl first and in 30 to 40 seconds.
Right, So everything works as a Bayesian inference, what does that mean? That means that everything is a hypothesis about the future, right, first, that is bounced against observation to see if there's a mistake or not, minus what you don't know. Yeah. Hypothesis versus observation minus what you don't know.
And that's gives you your essentially that's your snapshot of reality with everything that you have at your disposal.
Everything, exactly. But that actually works even on everything is like that. Like evolution works like that, life works like that, even quantum mechanics seems to be talking like that. Then there's something called Darwinism cosmology now, where it seems that everything works like that. right? Everything is a Bayesian inference. So in the case of the brain, that means that the brain does not, and that's the biggest mistake we make for the longest time, is to think the brain was something passive, just reacting to stimulus. Actually, that's not the case at all. What it gets light and then is the brain is continuously active, continuously making a prediction, a hypothesis as to what is going to feel from milliseconds to 2-3 seconds, right? And then after that, there's other part of the brain that will take over for the stuff. But so when we say prediction, we don't mean is it going to rain tomorrow. You have to understand that some of the prediction is made on the millisecond part. So I go like this. I'm like, by the time I do this, my brain is calculating exactly the pain that I'm going to feel. Then it's going to measure that idea versus the pain I'm actually feeling from the skin. And then that's going to create, is there a somatic, what is called a somatic error? Was that exactly what I thought was going to happen? Yes, okay, we're cool.
And the greater the gap?
Right, and so, but the point is like, I know that when I pinch the skin, it hurts. Right, so I've learned something. Don't get something to pinch your skin because it creates damage, right? The greater the gap, the more problem you get because then you have to fix the gap because not fixing the gap means dying, even on a cellular level.
The surprises are dangerous.
Right, that's what Carl Friston was talking about, the free energy principle that says that life tries to minimize surprises because it allows you to move forward, create more complexity, survive the world. So again, that's
You might have gotten that in 45
yes,
seconds. That's pretty good.
It's formidably complex ideas, right? But that's what the prediction model is. It's that, and by the way, it's not, because people go, is it going to rain?
I thought it was going to be like
right.
this.
It's like, no, it's not conscious thought.
Yeah.
Your skin does that. Visually, you do that, actually. But even without conscious thought, it is not a conscious thought process.
Yeah.
Cells do it. The membrane of a cell is a Markov blanket. No, let's not go there. But basically, everything is done. So you have different levels. You have the skin level. Then it goes into integration of that. Then it goes into absorption into the brain networks to see how I'm going to deal with life to make sure my skin doesn't get pinched. Yeah. So you have one level, then integration of the feeling to know if there's a somatic error, and then there's dealing with the somatic error. So there's multiple levels of integration that go from simple to far more complex into brain networks that is done continuously with a prediction versus observation model. So it's a 3D chess that is played on many, many different levels of depth, of complexity, of the same fucking game. So it's the most complex thing ever. The body is capable of doing things computers are not even touching.
Yeah.
Right. So we probably want gigantic quantum computer to be able to do this. Anyway, so but that's the beauty of the human body. Anyway, so one of the most complex things we have are the brain networks. Right. So it's certain part of the brain that connect together to give us specific things. So that's what I want to get into today.
Is this a physical region that you're describing? Yes. As in, because a lot of these things you're getting
they are separated,
but there's a region here, a region here.
And when
so
you get
some of these
the combinations
that are getting assigned that you're able to draw these correlations to, that is measurable. A lot of
right, and it's been measured. So it's separate parts of the brain when connected together do certain things. Okay. So those are the brain networks. So there's many, but you can. It's a bit of an oversimplification, but again, we are starting this through neuroscience, and as the human species is very new. If you look, like we're barely starting with this. So we have to categorize things so that we can start wrapping our head around it. That categorization will always be an oversimplification, always, because it's far more complex, but you have to start somewhere, right? So we're going to split, for today, we're going to split two major networks, right, to explain the point. There's going to be the task negative network and the task positive network. Task negative network, why is it called like that? Because it's also called a default mode network, is what happens when you don't do shit. Right? When you're resting, you're cool and everything, that's a task negative network. Task positive network, obviously, requires you to take action into the world. Right? Those are different things. So the default mode network is, interestingly speaking, where the I and the me lives, but not the whole notion of I. So that's why we're going to have a podcast about this, because very, very interestingly, there's actually two I for you. There's a passive I, and then there's a active I. So there's I as an agent always, but as an agent of I'm not doing anything. Yeah. And then there's I as an agent of I am doing something. When you have into the I as an agent of I'm doing something, that's going to go toward the task positive force. I, as an agent of I'm not doing anything, means I am doing something. I am monitoring what is happening inside.
Yeah.
It's an extremely important function. Otherwise, you would die, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that passive I is very important. And that passive I is linked in the default mode network with the me, which means this is how I feel. So you have an entire part of the brain that is directed in a default mode network, right? So the parts of the brain that are directed toward monitoring what happens inside. And that's basically the whole job. So the default mode network and the sense of self are connected together, and they are all in the left side of the brain. That happens to be, so that's the parasympathetic side, is the left side of the brain.
And when you mentioned that parasympathetic side, left side, we had just shown this thing. You said essentially the parasympathetic signals coming up from the entire body,
all the way to the left,
all lead to the left side, which is interesting.
Yeah, isn't it, right?
Yeah.
And the active eye, which is the one making you do stuff, is located on the right side of the brain. So all the sympathetic go toward the right side of the brain. So, but you would think since the left side of the brain is supposed to be the one that is very logical and everything, you would be toward the right side, on the left side. But actually, it's the left side of the brain. That's the parasympathetic side of the brain because that's the side of the default network that allows you to have story comprehension. So if you want to, because I don't explain while you do that, I'm starting to get hot. Let me just
no problem
take that out. So if you just tell people what the default mode network does, for example.
Yeah. So I've got a list here. In this list, there's functions of the default mode network.
Yeah.
This is Wikipedia. So, but it's the neurological basis of the self. It is responsible for autobiographical information, memories of, collection of events, and facts about oneself. Self-reference, referring to traits and descriptions of oneself, like I am tall, I am handsome, I am, all.
So that's the I.
Yeah.
And the me.
Emotion of oneself, reflecting about one's own emotional state. I was fucking pissed, or that.
Exactly. That's the me, right? All the way. Yeah.
And then thinking about others. Theory of mind.
So social environment.
Yeah, thinking about the thoughts of others fits in here. It
So
says
parasympathetic,
what they
right?
may or may not know.
Right.
And so that's another
empathy.
thing. Yep, empathy. So it's a whole other thing on the counterfactuals
Not
too, which is
exactly
an interesting piece of
yeah.
capacity. Moral reasoning, determining what is just and unjust results of an action. Social evaluations, good, bad, attitude, judgments about social concepts. Social categories, reflecting on important social characteristics and status of a group. Remembering the past and thinking about the future. Remembering the past, imagining the future. Episodic memory. Specific memory, specific events.
Story comprehension.
Yeah. Understanding, remembering narrative. It's active during passive rest and mind wandering.
Yep.
Which usually involves thinking about others, thinking about the future, rather than the task being performed.
Exactly.
So if you're out running, going for a run,
right.
and you're not thinking about running, you're thinking about something else, you are at least doing something a little bit different.
Yeah, so here goes why Disney December. The point, so that is the left side of the brain, that is the parasympathetic side of the brain. That is where all the parasympathetic afferent go to, right? And this is where the me and the I live. The passive I lives. And that's the default mode network. So when you do Disney December, that's why I was giving them visual cue, like you have to look around, right? So you can take in what the world is around you. And this is why I say it's not a workout. Because the point is that you're not doing anything. On the contrary, you're thinking about you, about others. You're placing yourself within social norms. You're thinking about your morals, whatever. You're activating the default mode network so that we can build the I and the me of your left side of the brain, your sense of self toward the Disney December. And then we use the high frequency sounds to trigger the vagus nerve, which is the parasympathetic side, which goes toward the left side of the brain, where the I and the me lives. So that's why the Disney December is to build the passive I and the me, where your part of yourself, a huge part of yourself is. So that's why the Disney December. So that is a brain network of its own. That is called the default mode network. Yeah. So extremely important, obviously.
Yeah. And we've talked about this in the past. We kind of went into detail on that one in the past. But these other networks,
right? So now we go into the task.
We have not talked about necessarily in depth. Even task positive, we haven't really gone into depth.
Yeah, I never go into it. So now we go toward task positive network. So those are toward the sympathetic side, right? So it's more toward the right side of the brain. I'll explain it very quick. I'll explain on that one. But those are the stuff where you need to do things. So the task positive network is actually two networks. It's more than that, but let's divide it into two major networks. You have what is called the salience network, SALIENCE, the salience network, and the other one is the executive network. Right. What is the salience network? Salience network is, when you have a bunch of X's and then there's a T in the middle, and then you spot that, the T, that's what the salience network is there for, is to collect information and draw patterns from it. So interestingly speaking, the salience network is actually a mix of both the default mode network and the attention networks. So the task positive network is called an attention network, right? The salience network uses actually some of the default mode network, so we see it on brain imagery where some of the same places get lit up, and the executive network, which is pure action. All of that gets basically, so the whole brain gets lit up on the salience network because that's the most important part, especially in insular cortex, which we'll talk about because it's a very, very important part, where the whole brain gets lit up because that's when you need to draw patterns, information from the world in order to assimilate the patterns to be able to learn from and to move forward.
Yeah.
Right.
Will you give me a specific, just a generic moment in a day in which the salience network is going to be?
Have you ever done that thing where if you focus on a point you don't see, but if you can start to look back, the stuff jumps up in 3D? Yeah. Right, that's the salience network for you. If you start to fix on a point, you go full executive, you can't see. But if you can jump back slightly, right? Because when you go like this, it's a full sympathetic, you're going too far. So you back up, but if you don't pay attention, you can't see it either. So it's that mix between the two. That's a salience network. Its salience means, drawing patterns from, for example, you're reading a study and you go, I remember that part from last time. That's a default mode network. Remember like the past and story comprehension, right? And you go like, suddenly you put one and one together, so you get an epiphany. That's the salience network. You've drawn pattern together and now you can act on that. And then when you act on it, you go toward the executive network, which is you just fuck shit up. That part where you're like, nope, like we're just doing this.
Yeah, you've established you've established all the common characteristics that you need to, and now it's just time to go.
You're so busy doing something precise, you don't feel anything. Right? Let's say you're cutting something precisely, nothing else in the world exists but that. But in a way, you don't either.
Yeah, which is why when you get done doing something like that, you ever do anything tedious, whether it's fixing something, so do that stuff, you get done, like there's a moment where you're just like, whew, even looking around the world, you have to zoom way the fuck back. It's overwhelming.
Right, because now you're coming back toward you. Because if you notice, like let's say you do that for an hour.
You were not in that.
You were not, there was no I or me in that. There was just the action. So then suddenly you're like, whoa, and then the world jumps back at you because now you are back to monitoring the world. And it's not just the world, it's everything inside that you shut off as well. So now you have all that information from inside and from outside that jumps back at you, and that's why you go, whoa, as you said, overwhelming, right? Because you went back into you for a moment, you just stepped away from yourself. So because literally you did, because there was no passive, so the active I lives in a salience network. Right? But in the executive network, you suppress the default mode network, so the passive I and the me, and you suppress the salience network, so there's no active I either. So literally, when you are busy doing that in the executive network, there is no you. You've lost your sense of self while doing that completely.
Which is probably a requirement in some of those.
Sometimes when you fight the bear, I don't have time to think about the dichotomy of the human condition.
There's now it's interesting. So we're kind of mentioning from network to network to network and those things. What is involved? Is this decision making? Is this automatic?
Okay, so
is this,
yes,
is that?
Right. So there's in the attention network, there's something called the ventral attention network that decides the switch. That there's a dorsal anterior part of it, and one part decides when to stay in a network, and the other part of the ventral attention network decides when to switch. Right. So when you're stuck in your head, that means you're stuck in a default network in the parasympathetic side. and you cannot switch to either a salience or anything on the attention network thing. You cannot switch even though you're required to, and that's when you're stuck in your head, even though you want to do something, you just can't.
Yeah.
Like, say, I want to do that, but you can't get your ass off. It's because you're stuck in a parasympathetic side, in freeze, and it's not letting you take action toward what you want to do. That means the ventral attention network is not doing its job. So this is where it becomes fascinating, is once I start linking all that together, because I want to go toward the active eye. So the active eye is on the right side of the brain, and the hub of the active eye is the right anterior insula, which is so part of the insular cortex, and such an important part of the brain. It's like this, it's right there, and it's a hub for almost everything. Like if you just Google the right anterior insula, it's insane the number of things that is being done in that. But that is the hub of the active eye is the right anterior insula. That is the hub of the ventral attention network. So that means that in order to be able to switch networks, you need a strong active eye. So what is an active eye, by the way? It's when you say you need to do this. But that you is still you. Yeah. You're still the subject.
Yeah.
That's the active eye. When I go like, I don't feel like doing this, like that's a passive eye because I'm doing shit.
So,
like that's
so
you.
if my self-talk is in the terms of, if you will, like Tyler, fucking go.
Exactly, right.
That's a different thing.
That is the active eye. It's the right interior insula.
Okay.
That happens to be the hub for the ventral attention network that decides switching network. So that means that the stronger your active eye, the better you are at switching networks, the better you are prepared for life. So if you're stuck in your head and not allowing you to do the stuff that you want to do, but you go, I can't move, it's because your active eye is not strong enough. We can go into Freud, into that one, the ego and the id and all that stuff, but you know what I mean?
I want to digress here just because to tie back to something else. It always reminded me when we were talking about this over the last few weeks. You talk about that as the right anterior insula as the kind of the switching hub, if you will, right?
Everywhere.
And what does it
do?
What
also
intakes it's doing to make through all that stuff. There's a lot there, but it reminded me going back to the Demon in the Machine, actually, which was because this is been around. It's a book. Check it out. But that it just reminded me of like. Okay, so now we have this thing that sits here, and it's just like the Demon in the Machine.
Right, exactly.
It gets to choose. And what is that decision making based on? It really is only this intent, this information, or this just data. Like I have a purpose, so I make decisions based on this. That is very interesting to me, and that there's only like
Maxwell's demon.
Intellect, if you will, or intent, I guess is the best word for it. Sitting there, and it just sits there and makes that decision.
That depends what the right anterior insula does. So now we're going to go into that. Okay. Right, so that Maxwell's demon. Yeah. Right? What else happens in the right anterior insula that is of interest to us? Because that's when it gets very interesting. So the active eye is the same place as the ventral attention network that allows you to switch networks. So we can see as from, let's say, a Freudian perspective, right? That you, Tyler, go do something is the part that allows you actually in life not to be stuck in your head. Right. What else does the right anterior insula do? It does monitoring of blood pressure during exercise. It does, I know, right? Pain cognition, right? Yeah. So not just, and by the way, monitoring of temperature on the skin, pressure, things like that, right? So that means that the right anterior insula that monitors blood pressure during exercise, pain cognition, temperature, contact, and all that stuff is the same place where the active eye lives. And that happens to be the same place that is required to be strong in order to be able to switch network whenever needed. Yeah. Right. So high blood pressure during exercise, pain cognition, and then body temperature on the skin, core temperature and all that stuff. Does that remind you of something?
It all sounds like neoprene to me. But
right, exactly, right? And that reminds you of the burn the questions. Yeah. Right, so that means that burn the question, is that executive network? No, it isn't, because you can't push the sled until you feel nothing.
That's true.
So what do you get out of the sled? You get an overwhelming response from your body.
Until you feel fucking everything.
Exactly. So you're not you're in the salience network. You have an overwhelming feeling from your body at the same time as you need to keep on pushing. So this is how you build the active eye, through that exercise. So burn the question, especially with neoprene, will be the best way to create you active I, which is the only way you can live outside of your own head, because now you're in the, so what does it promote? Right side of the brain, sympathetic side. So it all ties up to the burn the question stuff. If you do burn the questions truly, but the point is, so that's why pacing won't work.
Yeah.
Because then you don't feel enough.
And that's why if we zoom all the way back, and I hope you're all taking notes. I just do. Go back, listen. This is a good one. Take notes because
this is 3D chess. This is
also
as simple as I can make it.
This is also going to be there's going to be a lot of foundational information here that we'll get to going forward. But it's very interesting when you talk about how you can't get out of your head without training the sympathetic, truly training. And look at what happens when you talk about the problem.
But not brain dead. Yeah.
Look at the problem with pacing is what happens in those people. They are truly
stuck in their head.
We see it in the fitness space all the time. Is you get there and it's just a fucking head game, and they're just and the only thing they have to do is do this thing. Like,
so let's go at this because I think it's very important. Because what do we see when we say do the select people? Well, I did what you said. And I'm like, no, you did not. You're still stuck in your head. So again, stuck in your head is what? Story comprehension. So people say, I want a program. Because you want to read. That story comprehension. That's the default mode network. That's you being stuck in your head. You have understood the intent. And yet you can't get away from, I need a program, because then it allows you to stay in the default mode network, right? And so, but at the same time, what happens if you pace is you don't feel your body enough. If you feel your body enough, guess what? You're trying to get away from the silence network but both sides of the arch go to its max. So that's not how, you're still stuck in the default mode network when you're trying not to expend too much energy. See the parasympathetic side as a way to gain energy, the sympathetic side as a way to expend energy, right? The left side of your body it's the parasympathetic, so left side all the way to the brain, let's put it this way. Left side of the brain will be, how do I gather energy? Right side of the brain is, how do I spend it? Right, so when you pace, what do you think you're trying? You're trying not to spend too much. So you're not. No. You're trying to get away from the sympathetic. You're trying to conserve.
You're like on purpose trying
to conserve energy. And guess what? That's a freeze mode back on the parasympathetic side. So the only way to get out of your head is for 30 seconds, take a sled and don't be you.
Yeah.
Or actually in that case, be not I, be you. Yeah. Be you do this, right? You are not allowed to stop. You're going to push and everything. There is no more, how do I feel? No, wrong side, wrong network, right? So it's very important to be able to build a strong I.
Before we go further, too, I've been thinking this a lot because the words, you have to remember, born Catholic school, South Dakota.
Yeah.
First, so like Julien started sending me these things weeks and weeks ago about me versus I and self and you and this, and I'm reading this going, well, those all mean the same thing.
Right. Right.
Like you know what I mean? Like my, in your country ass is like, okay.
And most people.
Those are synonyms.
It's not your country ass. It's most people watching right now.
But my question is there value in just like you said, just simply trying to maybe adjust your, literally like the words in your thoughts as you're managing those things?
No, but it's more than that. The understanding of you.
Understand the system.
Right.
Understand how you need to communicate.
Because the biggest problem is when people say they're stuck in their head is that's who they think they are. Mm-hmm. What I want them to understand is that we're not stuck in being one thing or even two things. The brain is a set of networks. So literally you have different personalities in a way. You know, I remember when I talk about Mike and John, right? So from a neuroimaging perspective, guess what? You have left side, right side of the brain. Yeah. Mike wants to gather energy and conserve energy. Mike is Mike the pussy or Mike the fighter? I don't remember.
Mike's a pussy today. I don't know.
Wait, was John the? I can't remember which one.
I don't think we
Mike
gave
and
them
John.
titles.
No, I cannot did. But so Mike is
always first, and John's
okay. So Mike is always first. All right.
it.
So Mike is the parasympathetic. He's in freeze. He's trying to conserve energy, either gather or conserve energy. Not spending too much energy. What is that? The freeze mode, playing dead. Right. Yeah. That's Mike. John is literally the one going like, I'm going to spend it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's usually you have Mike and John. Being stuck in your head just means you're stuck being Mike.
And you're not doing what you need to do to really like change your attention and give that guy space.
Mike won't spend energy. This is what really I want people to understand is that Mike cannot spend energy. Mike cannot spend energy because he's not built for it. Mike is built only to gather and conserve energy. So when you're pacing, that means Mike is training.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Now you're stuck in your head. And because you're not using John, whose job is to spend energy, when you're in a position where you're supposed to spend energy, you create a somatic error. You are expecting a certain feeling, a certain effort that is not happening. So now you have the somatic error, and that's what gives you anxiety. So anxiety is not because you're stuck in your head. Anxiety is because you're stuck in your head. You're stuck in the wrong state for that action.
Yeah. And when you mention it like that, it sounds often like any system now. So any system you have, there's multiple parts with multiple purposes and intent behind it.
It's really chess.
And if I talked about this, let's just say Julien and I both work for the same company, weird coincidence. But Julien's job is to have big ideas and to think forward and to go.
Exactly.
And his job is to go. That's perfect. Your job is to just do ideas thing. And let's say my job is to make sure we're not spending too much money. Save money, cut things. That's kind of my focus, right? So Julien and I are going to have very different ideas, very different intents, very different processes. The system will not work if Julien just does what Julien does, because we could be out of money in 3 weeks.
If I'm in charge of money,
and we're fucked.
We're fucked. Because my job is to spend.
Yeah. And if I'm in charge of having good ideas, we're only going to have cheap ideas.
Right, exactly. Right.
And I'm going to buy shitty toilet paper for the business.
Right.
And everyone's going to hate it. People are going to quit. You can't.
And then we kill the culture of the business. And
so you need to
we
have
don't need that.
tension.
Right.
You need to have that, the as above, so
everybody
below.
has a job.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's extremely important of people, because the problem is thinking like I and me is the same. That's, again, we can go back to Freud on this. So this has been, in a way, said 100 years ago, even without all the advances in neuroscience. We knew already, is that the I, the passive I and the active I are not the same thing. Like, I mean, ego and the id and all that stuff. Right? Passive I and active I are not the same thing. And then the me is an altogether other things. Yeah. In psychology, this has been discussed for a very, very long time. But if you think it's all the same, then you're going to be stuck.
So many people do.
Right.
And she'll listen to this, she won't take it the wrong way, but my wife has been working with me on this for a month, since we have. Because I have to, the way I understand it, I have to understand it, and she's the first person I try to explain things to.
To see if you
And man, do I suck at explaining this to her. That's what I figured out in the beginning.
Right.
But also, it's such a new concept. How do you explain to somebody that, all the things you experience and everything, it's not all you are. They're already like, the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, right. But it's such a major thing, because if you think it's just one thing, you're going to be stuck in your head, because you're going to be stuck in the default mode network that does not let you act.
Yeah.
And so we can go into, there's an interesting idea about gender in that sense. Gender more like feminine versus masculine energy, because if you look...
let's do that one. Yeah, let's do that one, and I think that might be about as far as we'll
go this
round
time.
that one
Did
out.
I explain enough?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because I'm barely starting.
It's not terribly long, but what I know, digestible,
is that
we're
an hour?
already there, but we're not long enough.
Okay.
So I want to do the male female thing that we kind of talked about, and touch on the emotional, that side.
Okay, right. Did I cover enough? Because I'm barely starting.
I am telling you, I have been getting spoon-fed this information from you for weeks.
Yeah.
This is the best. This is good. It's a lot. I've been getting if you're getting all the studies and stuff at the same time, you still don't get it. So
yeah, because this is barely the beginning. Like, I'm just laying down. I'm just explaining. I haven't even explained anything. I'm just giving the vocabulary.
I know.
That's all I'm doing.
This is a foundational step.
Oh, you guys are in for a ride, man. This is, oh my God.
This is the problem too. If I don't, but the thing is, if I don't, what I know is we'll run off on this. And when it's going to be harder for us than next time and next time and next time and next time.
Listen, yeah.
But I think
that's where I live.
But let's talk male versus female, and then maybe touch on emotional mapping.
So when I say male versus female, people are going to think it's a gender thing. It is and it isn't. We have to understand male energy versus female energy, because in today's world, you can't say...
Masculinity, femininity are different.
You can never say men versus women now. Everybody's taking the wrong way. Yeah. I'm going to go at it from an evolutionary perspective. So in order to do that, I have to generalize. That doesn't mean you ladies fit into what I'm going to talk about.
Men are bigger than women. Not all.
Not all.
Men, but evolutionaries,
men are stronger than women. Not all. But men are more aggressive than women. Not all. Yeah. But if you take So let's start this as a constraint.
Yeah.
When I talk about something, let's say I say men are more aggressive than women. Right. In the center of the curve, it's 60-40. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't really... 60-40 is not, you can't draw a conclusion on that. Are there women more aggressive than men? For sure. They're mostly American. But for example, if I take it was a joke. Relax. Don't cut it off.
No,
I just made a joke.
I was simply making sure.
You all relax. But if I take, for example, the top 1,000 most aggressive people in the world, it's going to be 1,000 men.
Yeah.
Agreeability, right? If I take the top 1,000 more agreeable people, it's going to be women. There's a reason for that, right? Because if we look evolutionarily speaking, you have what? You have inside the cave, outside the cave, right? So outside the cave, how do you solve issues? With your fists, with a spear. A fight is done when one is dead or close, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it goes more toward that.
Yeah.
Now, can you do that inside the cave? No, because it's your family. Imagine if you die with the kids. I mean, some do, unfortunately, but then you'll kill the kids. So as a function inside the cave, that means the fights cannot be physical. So what are you going to fight with? Words. So if you look, and again, generalization, if you split men, women in that sense, like again, energy, masculine energy, I'm going to say men and women, but please, let's agree it's masculine energy versus feminine energy, so it's faster, and you don't kill my French accent every time. Right, so men, you will see women are better at fighting with words than men. In a fight with words, men lose.
Always.
We'll beat women with our fist. But when it comes to words, men are like, you're so mean. Oh my God. Well, you know who's the meanest of all creatures on earth? Teenage girls. I know because my daughter is 15. She comes back crying twice a week because girls, teenage girls will say shit where I'm like, oh, that is so mean.
Yeah, horrifying.
Horrifying shit. But you know what? What are boys doing? They're starting to
beating the shit out of each other.
Stop, and they're learning to beat the shit out of each other. And so women learn to fight with words. So we see that a lot with teenage girls. They'll be the first one to ruin reputations as a tribe because they're learning how to fight. Because inside the cave, this is how you need to fight. Inside the cave, you have to be able to get to deal with shit more. Yeah. Multitasking, but more than that, you have to be able to you have a fight and within an hour you're like, okay, well, let's make up, let's move on, right? You have to be able to accept that. Men can't. If we have a fight, 2 weeks later, I'm like, until we beat the shit out of each other. Until then, this is not over.
But once that's happened,
it's over. Because we sold it.
I am telling you this, growing up, I probably got pulled from recess in the whatever amount of years you have in recess, 5 years or whatever, 3 years, 4 years of recess. I was pulled out of recess probably 40 times to go to the principal's office for fighting with people. Oh, yeah. Every single time we're sitting there in the office after, shirts ripped, fucking blood everywhere. You're sitting there and you're going, all right, so we're going to tell her we fucking fell. We were trying to get the basketball when the teacher came up, and that's it. He's like, all right, the deal. And
because you're good. Yeah, because you fought it off.
I fucking had a thing, and now that was the thing. Like I took it to that.
But until then, you can't get over it.
No.
Whereas women will get over it in a second. That's what they mean by agreeable. Women will, okay, fine. They'll go like, okay, I don't agree, but, like you feel like you're an asshole to her because you're starting to be violent and you talk to her like this and she's like, all right, and then you feel bad because you're like, fuck, I was an asshole. Because we don't know how to fight like that. But so that's what agreeability is the capacity to get over stuff so that inside the cave, the stuff keeps running, right? So, and women are so superior to men at this, right? That's an inside the cave stuff. Men are, so that's the default mode network, story comprehension, right? Morals, societal structure, right? The passive I and the me. How do I feel about this? Like all that stuff is built for inside the cave.
So do you think that from say a training perspective that women are going to be generally more proficient at
pacing,
or at least predisposed?
Predisposed to pacing, which means what do they like? Again, generalization, 40 minutes workout. Oh, I'm sweating, but while doing those 40 minutes workouts, they can like, oh, I'm not in my head as much. Yeah, but you can, how do I feel about this? So what do women do 5-round workout? The first round, they always pace because they need to win that round. Or I need to feel good about that round because it sets me up for the second one. Yeah. And then within 30 minutes, they feel awesome, right? Because they're basically, so what are they doing? A lot of easier breathing than if you go hard, right? So you have great blood flow. You have, what is all that? Parasympathetic all the way. For example, it's been shown that women, when it comes to, they can take pain, but on the passive side, not on the active side as much. So you see workouts where they'll pace because they'll get to a leveling off of the intensity, and then they can stay there for an hour. That's that conservation of energy in a workout so that they can win. Because again, in the cave, you have to win. Guys losing, yeah, sure, we love it.
We're replaceable.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
This is the truth.
They are not.
Yeah.
They are not, because then the kids die.
Yeah.
But look at society. Women are irreplaceable. Men, but you see that in movies and everything. We accept dying. That's part of the gig.
Yeah.
Women cannot die. So look at all cultures. War have been started over protecting women.
Yeah.
What we feel the most manly is when we protect our women, because we know they are irreplaceable.
Also on a biological drive standpoint too, that like as a male, you can exist in say 10 years of your prime, 5 years of your prime or whatever. You could theoretically father lots of children during that time. You could father 50 a year if you're busy enough.
Yep.
You know, but a woman's you got one every 9 months, about the best you can do.
It's one a year.
You know,
exactly. So, and it's expensive.
Yeah, and it's
look at the body, how much it's very expensive to have a kid.
And so survival is much more important, because every year is more important. Whereas we're guys like, hey, we just got to get in.
I can get a kid when I'm 60.
Throw a frenzy around, make as much, and then just fucking.
I can have a kid when I'm 60.
Yeah.
But so the other, and by the way, so that's one function, right? And so again, women are irreplaceable. We are not, right? And the other function is we have to fight the bear. Not anymore. But so when I see inside the cave, outside the cave, imagine we're talking 10,000 years ago, right? But evolutionarily speaking, that's the road we took. And so we still have to fight the bear. And fighting the bear means, I don't care if I'm maimed, right? But you're not going through.
Yeah.
What does that require? The executive network, where I am willing to sacrifice parts of my body, but you are not going through. So that means that even if I'm fucking my guts are torn open again, I'm still going to stab you in the leg. That's that's who we see again at the more manly. Like, you know, in Japanese culture, all that stuff, is the guy is beat up to shit and he still stands up. Rocky. You knock him down. Buddhism, 7 times down, 8 times up. Why? Because when the bear is coming, I don't care if you kill me, but you're now not going through. That requires a negation of self. Japanese culture, negation of self. You see that in many, many cultures. That's the main side, is negation of self, so that the bear is not going through. And we know that at work, which means like, if we're fighting, okay, then I'll destroy you, your life, everybody, your kid, because I'll destroy your tribe over mine. Right, and that's when you see men doing horrible things, because well, it's your tribe or mine, then it's mine. Yeah. Then I'll kill women, children, everybody. But so that's the problem, is now you're an executive network. So what does it take to kill children? Having no morals. Where are morals? Default mode network, right? Parasympathetic side. So then the more you go toward the sympathetic side, technically the less morals you have.
So there's always so no matter what, let's say, all right, so if women have a predisposition towards being biased on
toward the parasympathetic side,
men on
default
the
mode network,
we still need to strive for balance.
Yeah,
overall.
But by the way,
maybe not balance, but you need to do work outside of that space. So,
right, but let's go back to this, because I want to move forward throughout evolution. Okay. So remember, for example, 10,000 years ago, women were huge. You see that from they were like just what we would call today obese. You see that from those statues and everything. Why? Parasympathetic like vagus nerve triggers fat. Remember the melanocortin axis, right? So more vagus nerve trigger, more parasympathetic triggers, more fat you produce. For women inside the cave, it is necessary. Because then it means fathering children, milk production.
Plus for the 8 kids you lost, you may have carried 15.
Right. Exactly, right. All that stuff, right? So you can see, whereas sympathetic side, for example, that's when orgasm happen. Right. So pure sympathetic means great orgasm, means chasing pussy all day. So you can see also how the sex would be divided between the two. Yeah. But now, you move evolution to a world where suddenly women today want to be outside the cave. Right, good, right. But now, that means that the rules have changed. You cannot be outside the caves with the rule that implied inside the cave. So that means that if you try to take your default mode network and apply it to today's world work and stuff like that, you're going to run into trouble, because you're going to try to use the same methods, which are, this is how I feel, and I want, so I'll make a little fun of women on this, but basically, as my grandmother said, the difference between men and women, a man wants a woman to stay the same, and a woman wants the man to change for her. So women want that how they feel is how everybody feels. We know that inside the house, right? That is how you feel. Okay, then the man is like, that's how I feel too. Then we all come on. All married men have been there, but in the cave, it is necessary because it's the woman's cave, and it's like she's the center of the cave. So her world is the cave. So therefore, how she feels is how the world is. That's a default mode network, right? Where me is so strong, me becomes the cave. Because she's the leader of inside the cave, and therefore that's how it works. Almost like the Spider Queen. That's the same idea, right? But if you try to do that outside, now you're going to run into a problem because the world is not controlled anymore. It's not your world. Now you have to go against bears and shit, but you know what I mean. So the same rules don't apply. So now if you try to say how I feel needs to apply to everyone, you have today's problem.
Yeah.
So you see that a lot with women wanting to be in executive role, but at the same time, he has to feel good. No, he won't. Jeff Bezos works 80 hours a week.
You're not going to find a lot of big, huge CEOs that fucking like super dig and feel great all the time. Like dig their job. That what they are a man. It is just doing. It is purpose. It is
and what
everything.
is that? Executive network.
Yeah.
So those are the guys that went out and killed the bears and what you need to...
So if you want to be happy, that may not be the person you want to be.
No, so that's the thing.
You want that.
Right, and that's the problem women are facing today is the idea that I want to work executive, but I want to be happy doing it. And that's what on the guy side we're trying to explain, but you don't feel happy. No one feels happy working 80 hours a week. They do it because by definition they don't feel.
Yeah.
Because in order to be in the executive network, you have to negate yourself, which women will have a very hard time doing since through evolution, there was exactly the opposite. The more they felt, the stronger the cave was. The better mothers, the better chiefs they were inside the cave. So now we're going to have to ask them to negate who they are in order to achieve things. That's going to be rough. That's going to be rough because evolutionarily speaking, that is not how they are built. So it's not the same brain network.
Yeah.
So can we build that network? Of course we can, right? But it's going to come at a price. Which means even when you're on the active I, you lost the me, by the way. You didn't lose the I, but you lost the me. The me only lives in the left, only lives in a default mode network. That means that in order to activate you're going to do that. That means you have to negate not negate, but like it's not going to feel good.
You have to spend time building outside of that.
Well, you're going to feel stuff, you're just not going to feel good. There's a sled. It's like, but it hurts. I'm like, yeah. But you tell yourself, I'm going to do it anyway. So that active I is I'm going to do it anyway. That's a salience network.
Do you think though in those moments of you say like that doesn't feel good, right? Putting in an 80-hour work week, you don't feel like whatever, right?
Yep.
But there is there has to be some sort of kickback reward on a longer time frame than on like out of accomplishment or effort. Is there something like that?
But
where
you don't know it. Like when Jeff Bezos started, he started with 80 hours a week. He didn't know if he was going to work.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Is that we're going back to the Black Swan podcast with it. But when Joe Rogan started his podcast, he didn't do it for success. Right?
No, yeah.
So he did the podcast, and every single time he was like, today I have to do a podcast. Why? Because I said I would. Yeah. That's the active I. That's the salient. Knowing that over time, who knows? But he didn't have to know.
Rogan got the biggest podcast in the world by never even wanting to have a podcast.
Exactly.
It started with just me and my friends. Oh, we'll set up the computer.
So he was having fun.
They're in the green room.
He was having fun, but not every single. He still continued. So not every single podcast was fun. No. Because if you start to do the podcast thinking, how do I feel? Well, I'm going to tell you, some days it won't feel good. Yeah. So then you'll quit.
Yeah.
Right? And so, So that's the salience network. And then eventually you have to go to a pure executive network, which is let's just do the shit. Do the email, do that. But to do that requires a total negation of the default mode network. And that's going to be hard for a feminine energy. That's going to be very hard to do.
What about on the other side with masculine energy then? Are we just out swinging fucking hatchets in the world right now?
Like we can't connect to our emotions. So like you say, a lot of women, like when they talk about toxic masculinity, saying men cannot express their emotion. Well, that's true. We are not designed for that. So you're asking men to develop more right now the default mode network. Mm-hmm. That's what the balancing they're trying to do. Okay, that's going to go, it's visible. It's just going to go, it's going to require, for example, men to get in touch with their emotions, which is true because some of them go so far toward executive network because they deny themselves to the point where it fucking hurts too. We are not in a world that requires to dive when the bear is going through anymore. So there's going to be recalibrating from the male energy the other way, where we need more the default mode network, more story comprehension. You're the one telling the story to kids at night. Morals, don't fuck around, develop your morals correctly. Like, so we need to develop a default mode network, more, a better one, so that we can be in touch about how we feel. So as a huge oversimplification, men need to do the Disney December, women need to do the burn the questions. Yeah. You know what I mean? In order to find balance.
Now,
I don't know if balance is what we need as a species or not, but in order to do it, this is what needs to be done.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask.
I don't know.
Is do we, I mean, like obviously right now, the need for us to have to understand this so that we can apply it and make some sort of change, because what your life is and what you want it to be are different at the moment, whatever that may be. But is that because like society has outpaced evolution in this last,
for sure,
500 years, 1,000 years, whatever?
For sure, but at the same time, let me use two examples. Let me use the Norwegian example or Denmark. Let me use Denmark versus the US. Denmark is, ladies, you do whatever you want, right? What you see actually a greater disparity in job determination than in the US, for example, which means most women go toward either the service industry, nursing, stuff like that, and everything in Denmark, where it's probably one of those countries where the equality between men and women is the greatest. And you see actually more disparity in Denmark when it comes to job allocation than you see in most Western worlds. So when left to their own device, women will choose jobs that are taking care of people.
That you would just describe as just a more feminine role. I mean, it's just,
taking care of people, the inside of the cave thing.
Yeah.
Well, they're choosing jobs that are closer to inside of the cave. Yeah. Taking care of people, taking care of their parents, taking care, like, so that's inside the cave. So again, nursing, teaching, those are all inside the cave stuff. And men go toward outside the cave kind of stuff. And then you have the second approach, which is the American. So what you have in Denmark is equality of opportunity, which means we'll let you do whatever you want. And what you see is women gravitate more toward inside the cave stuff, men toward outside the cave stuff. And then you have the US, which is, no, we're going to have equality of outcomes, which means we're going to get 50%. And they go like, so whether you like it or not, you're doing that. So that's going to require men to take, so basically what we have to do is we're going to have to take men away from the mine and make them more teachers. Then we're going to have to fire women from nursing and teaching position and make them become electricians.
You're going to be a terrible presidential candidate with that pitch.
But that's, I'm sorry, this is what they're offering.
Yeah.
Because everybody say we need more women executives. I'm like, I agree, but then we also need more women electricians and working the mine. And so we're going to basically, teaching in the US is about 80% women. Right, so we need to fire 40% of women to make them electricians.
Yeah.
Equality of outcome, man. Yeah. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's see if it works. Because honestly, nobody knows because we haven't done it yet. So I'm like, you guys want to try? All right, so let's fire 40% of nurses to make them become electricians and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm cool. Or we can do the Denmark solution, which is equality of opportunities, and then we let people decide.
Open
but
the doors,
if we're going to do equality of outcome, then those politicians will have to understand that 1 or 2 generations of women are going to have to go through a denial of self in order to be able to do that kind of stuff. Is that a price that people are willing to pay or not to? If they believe in equality of outcome, then that is the price that needs to be paid, which means we're going to have a very strong police force that is going to force a sizable percentage of the American population to deny themselves as people.
Yeah.
How about it?
We're getting there.
I don't live there anymore. You're all getting there. That's okay. I don't live there anymore, so I'm cool.
Given the police tanks and no
if you ask me my opinion,
we'll
I'll go with the Denmark system. Yeah. But as long as you hire more cops, I'm sure you ladies will be just fine. Yeah. But you could see, by the way, so by definition, if there is such a thing as evolution and genetics and everything, that means that the denying of the default mode network, imagine what it's going to do in somatic errors.
Yeah.
So guess what? It's going to give anxiety, a shit ton of anxiety to those people. So to the men that are forced to go toward feeling the stuff, they're going to get anxiety. And to the women that are forced to go toward executive network, toward denying themselves, that's going to give them a shit ton of anxiety. So that's the problem with goals that are not truly your goals, but goals given by others, is that it will give you a shit ton of anxiety.
And unacted upon anxiety can lead to essentially even furthering of the gap.
Right, so there's the problem. So what happens when the somatic error gets too big? So it's been shown that when that happens, you have a dysregulation of the system that creates even a bigger somatic errors. So it's like a snowball. Mm-hmm. At some point, the anxiety becomes where the body is like, fuck it, I need to find a way to rectify somatic errors, and tries erratic behavior to just trying to find a solution. Right. And that's why after a while, that anxiety leads you to complete erratic behavior, where you go, what the fuck? And it's shown because like the right insula goes to shit and everything. And from there, eventually you have to shut off the machine. And that's where major depression comes
total
in.
Collapse.
Total collapse, and that's major depression.
Yeah.
And so you can see how a simple following others' goal will lead to anxiety, to erratic behavior, to complete shutdown into major depression disorder, right? And all that because we are following someone else's goals, really. So that's why we always go back to, it's not what you do, it's how you do it, is the key to all this is for people to understand who they are and follow that. And you are not me. The only person that can decide who I am is me, not others. And so that's the key, right? So the better we understand that through neuroscience and also looking at culture and everything, the better the more confidence you'll have into trusting what the inside of your body is telling you. And it's not that voice in your head. It's not that. Yeah. It's because that's a very, very important point. When I say listen to yourself, I don't mean listen to the voice. The voice is a representation of a number of things, and not all of them are you. Yeah. So don't trust that voice in there. Trust what your body is telling you. Intuition, gut instinct. Do I feel good? All that stuff that we tend to dismiss in today's society as like, oh, but that's not scientific, or cold hard facts and all that stuff. It's another denying of what your body is telling you. Your body, your system, is the greatest computer ever invented by, it's not even in the same galaxy as Alpha Zero. This is a quantum computer. Trust this. Like the signals from your body can lead you the right way. But you're going to have the trust and the time and to start to work with it. And that's why the No Fix November was so important, right? Was to suppress all external signals of caffeine and sugar and everything, so that you were in contact with yourself. And by doing that, you reduce the somatic error that reduce your anxiety. That's great, but we can go further. Now you can start to learn that conversation between your body and everything, and so that you can go further in life. So and it goes to you.
And No Fix November is really more about just kind of exposing yourself to a clear version of that.
And to see the difference.
And from there forward, you should take that understanding, and then that's what you're going to build upon.
Right, exactly. But again, you're building you. No Fix November was not sacrificing yourself, was not depriving yourself. It was just, let's build you. But to build you, you're going to have to be in touch with you first, right? And then men have a major problem with that. But the problem is the life that you have does not fit completely outside the cave either, because we do want to be more active with the family and everything. So there's a readjusting of that, where you're going to have to be in touch with this. So stop the sympathetic fixes and start to work on the other side, so Disney December, in order to be in touch with you. And ladies that are too stuck in their head, some men are stuck in their head too, so feminine energy, right, would be like, you're going to have to build a stronger active eye. That requires burn the question and stuff like that. So, but don't use that as an excuse to only do Disney December. No. Please, you still need to do burn the question once a week and all
whatever that stuff. You're doing too much of, you're still doing too much of.
Yeah.
That's the way I was looking
at it. Right, exactly.
Well, I think you fucking nailed that one, dude.
Okay.
And we have a buzzer.
So okay, so
you go ahead and buzz in. I'll do the wrap up.
That was right on.
All right, guys, that's going to have us wrapped up for today. StrongFit.com, StrongFitEquipment.com, at StrongFit1 on Instagram, Tyler F. and Stone on Instagram, podcast.strongfit.com. Everything else is, I don't even remember anymore. Seminars at StrongFit. There's the anxiety seminar coming up soon. That's going to be, by the time you hear this, a couple weeks away, the anxiety one. So you're going to find all that stuff.
Yep. The anxiety, we'll talk about all this, actually. Oh, we should have done that.
No.
Okay, so there you go. That's what we'll talk about. Yeah,
So much
exactly.
stuff in
Yeah.
a day. But that's going to have us wrapped up. Thanks for listening to everything. And so scroll below in the details if there's anything I missed.
Bye, everybody.
See ya. Bye.